Hi y'all, it's Kimberly here. I have a little story time. I'm fixing to go to bed. I work nights, so I sleep in the daytime, but I'm going to tell y'all a story before I go to bed. Um, Thank you for showing up, everybody who's been subscribing. Thank you so much. I don't have a lot, but hopefully I'll grow. Um, this is kind of a scary, maybe not, maybe a little scary. It's more dangerous, I guess, but I used to be a newspaper delivery person, and I had a full route, and it was like my full-time job. And I did it 7 nights a week, and I did it for about 4.5 years. And I would go pick up the papers and roll them and get them all ready, and then I have route cards, and I had to go to all their addresses. And when you go to the address, you either throw it in the yard, or if they have a specific place that they want the paper, then you have to either drive up in the driveway or walk up to the door or whatever. And usually it would take about 3 hours to do my route. And I had this area that was kind of squirrely. It was kind of the roads were kind of like all twisted up, and just you kind of had to know your way around. And I grew up in that area, so I knew that area real good. And I would just drive around real fast and toss them, and I was real efficient and would get them done. And I'd come across weird things. Sometimes people would be out in the yard at 3 o'clock in the morning in their underwear yelling at me, or I had a couple people chase me down the street. I guess thinking that I was like a burglar or something, or I don't know. People, I don't know. They had weird behavior. They would be up late at night, and then they'd see me thinking I was doing something, but they didn't realize I was a newspaper person. But I had one incident where I drove up to it was like a duplex, and I drove up to the duplex, and it was dark. It was around probably about 4:30 or 5 in the morning. I think it's more closer to 5 or something. I was at the very end of my route. It's one of the last few houses that I had to do. And there was these two guys. I could see them as I was coming down the street. I was going up and down up and down the driveways, or, tossing the papers out the window. And I could see these two guys, and they were at the very end of the block, and it's a really long block. And it took me, about 5 minutes to get to the end of the block. And they were both just standing there. And usually when there was somebody around, I would try to, like, give them enough time to either go back in their house or go away or something, just to be safe. And they continued to stand there, and then they went back up to, I couldn't see where they were, but they went back up to the door, the porch or somewhere, the carport or whatever. And I was getting closer, and then they came back down. I was probably about 10 houses away. They came back down, and they were staring at me, and I got a little nervous, but I was like, oh well, I just continued to throw the papers. And then when I got to that house, it was kind of like it was a duplex, and it had a solid concrete driveway, kind of like a circle driveway. There was no grass. You just pull up on each side, and you could drive around through each exit or enter through each of the carports, like kind of like a circular drive. And I drove up, and they were standing pretty close to I guess where the sidewalk would be, but it was all paved over, so you really couldn't see in the dark. You couldn't see whether it was the carport or the sidewalk. And they were standing in this one particular spot, and they kind of gave me this side eye like that, and I was like, okay. And I just kind of quietly locked my door, and I still had to have the window rolled down because I have to throw the papers out. And I got this weird feeling, it seemed just the way they looked at me, and just all of a sudden I got this weird feeling. I just tossed the paper really fast, and I kind of pulled around them real quickly, and I heard them. They were whispering to each other or something. I couldn't hear what they're saying, but they were talking, and they just kept kind of following me around with their head, and I guess at first they didn't know who I was. I guess I kind of surprised them too. But later on, after I was done with my route. I went to go get breakfast or something. A couple hours later, I went home. And I would sleep in the daytime. I've worked a lot of night jobs, and I'm kind of a night owl. And uh, then I woke up a few hours later, or I guess later in the day, and I was watching the news, and it had this story about this man that had been strangled to death by his son. And I was I wasn't aware of it, except for the address. They called out the address, and I was like, that sounds familiar. That sounds like my, that's in my route. I delivered to that address. And I was like, oh my gosh, he killed his dad? And then it dawned on me, oh my goodness, those two guys were there. The son had just killed his dad, called his brother or cousin or somebody, another relative, because he freaked out after murdering his dad. His dad was still sitting on the porch. There was like a bench or something up there, or a couch. His dad was sitting on there when I had driven up and driven around them and threw in the newspaper. And I probably threw the newspaper right at their dad's feet or something. So that was one of the most, I guess, scariest or weirdest or a little bit dangerous thing that happened to me. But it was just something that, I got a little bit more scared. I usually wasn't too scared to do that job, but, I did have an incident here or there. I had a drunk guy one time running out into the street. He had a full bottle of whiskey, and it was in a dead-end street, and I went and threw each paper, one right after the other. On that block, had a lot of customers, and he ran out the door, and he was screaming and yelling, and he threw the bottle of whiskey in the street and said, "Come back here!" And of course I didn't. I just peeled out, left my dirt or my tire marks in the road. And he continued to follow me down the street, but he was so drunk, and he finally stopped. And another time, I was getting out of my car, and I always look before I get out of my car. I always look to be aware to make sure there's nobody around. I didn't see anybody. Look this way and that way, look around. Didn't see anything. Reached over, grabbed the paper, opened the door, got out of the car. I stepped out, and there was a guy immediately right there, and he had a hoodie on. He was covered up from head to toe. I nearly passed out, but he just went around the back of my car. He was walking to work or something, I guess. But it was like about 4:30 in the morning, and I've had incidents like that where people have been standing by the door and almost gave me a heart attack. So that job, I loved that job. It was really good, but it was sometimes I did have little scary incidents like that, and you had to be very careful, and it's dark at night, and that's when the weirdos come out. You don't know what's gonna happen. And then I've probably had about 15 flat tires, and I changed them all myself, so I became an expert at changing tires. And um, probably that's probably the most excitement that I had, was that one guy killing his dad and then me driving up on it. And I went back the next day, and the police were there. I went back early in the morning, or not in the morning, I guess it was right after that. Or no, it was the next morning, because I was on my route, and I saw a police officer there, and they had the tape around it and everything. I guess they were still investigating or whatever. And I told the cop there, I was like, I told him what happened, and he told me I need to go talk to some other cop over there, and I did, and I can't remember. I think they took my name or something. I don't remember, but that's probably just about the weirdest thing that ever happened to me, delivering newspapers. But it was a really good job, but it ruined my car. It really puts wear and tear on your car. So if you do a job like that, because we had to load up the Sunday paper, which is gigantic. The weekday paper is not very big at all. It doesn't take much time or room to really deliver that. But Sunday was like about about a 6-hour job. Well, actually pick them up the day before. You got to roll all the ads, you got to stuff them and put them all together, and that takes a few hours. And they come in bundles, and you got to put the ads in there, wrap the paper around it, and then put it either in a plastic bag or rubber band it. And that takes quite a while. And then you got to load it all up in your car, and then it weighs your car down. It really puts wear and tear on your car, your transmission, your brakes, and everything like that. So that kind of killed my car. So I ended up not getting to keep that job because my car it really ruined my car. But overall, that was a pretty good job, and it was fun. I really liked it. You could drive around all night, listen to the radio, and drink a Coke, and eat potato chips or whatever, and throw in the newspaper, and I really did love it. Okay, well, thank you all for listening, and I'll come back with another story time, maybe in a few days or next week. Like, subscribe, and comment if you want. Thank you. Thank you all.